Hello, everyone. I'm Hunter Willis, and today I'm going to talk about something that's kind of important to me, and that is why do horror movies lately just suck so much? For those of you who don't know, I'm kind of a pretty big horror fan. I really gravitate towards the classics, and my favorite horror movies of all time tend to be the more classic slasher films. To cite a few, I absolutely love the Friday the 13th franchise, and I've been a big fan of Scream for the past couple of years. So I definitely gravitate more towards the traditional slasher flick. Don't get me wrong, this is not a bash on the horror genre as a whole, because have been some bright stars that have emerged from the horror genre as of recently. A lot of A24 films are really brilliantly disturbing and they really accomplished the task that they're trying to. But when it comes to just about every other studio that operates in the horror genre as of late, they just seem to not have it. I have been able to narrow down just about every horror movie that has come out in the last, I'd say, 10 years into three simple categories: Jordan Peele and A24 Studios are exempt. The three categories of movie that I can nail down the entire decade of horror movies to are: number one, an uninspired and really non creative original piece; number two, a sequel to a successful original piece, i.e., The Conjuring or Sinister; or number three, a reboot of a classic that worked during its time. There's not all that much to say about the original pieces. They just tend to be mass produced, uninspired films with very simple plot lines that get old after about 10 minutes of watching it. They typically rely on their action sequences more than anything, and these movies just are boring to watch, if that makes sense. And since there's no pre-established precedent for the films, they just kind of seem independently bad. The second category I think is a little controversial among moviegoers as of late. I have nothing wrong with the original Paranormal Activity films, Sinister film, the first Sinister film, the first installment of the Conjuring series. I do have a problem with the kind of makeshift franchise that they've almost turned those into, because it just seems really really repetitive when you're trying to look for horror movies that are coming out, and they're just sequels to this one movie that was popular back in like 2015. And I know a lot of people like those movies and still think that they're scary and still think that the story needs to be told. But I'm just not really a big fan. This last category is the one that I care the most about because I'm such a big fan of the classics. I spent the last year getting really excited for Halloween Kills and Scream 5. And to be honest, both of these films let me down more than I could have ever imagined. They seemed really unoriginal in the way that they tried to approach, or in Scream's case, it tried to be too original and it drifted too far from the plot. In Scream's case specifically, it kind of took the playfulness of the very meta jokes that have kind of popularized Scream in the past, and it just ran with it in the way that every single piece of dialogue revolved around this concept. The director definitely took a lot of liberties in the way that they were going to treat the legacy characters in the movie, and in doing so, it felt almost disrespectful to the past, whilst not generating a future that fans can really care about. Halloween Kills is a whole different can of worms. It was very lazy in its plot line, and it just kind of felt almost like this show of gore with no real plot to it. It was just useless. It really did nothing to further where the new Halloween reboots are going. And I really liked the Halloween that came out in 2018, but this new one was just a complete train wreck. And I mean, you can see that in its Rotten Tomatoes scores, so I'm not alone in that opinion. I really appreciate these editors and directors coming in and trying to rekindle the once dead flames from horror movie franchises that I've loved for my whole life. But to be honest, to the extent that they've kind of taken those storylines and almost ruined them in a sense with their new installments, I would have much rather just let them die than to see them in a modern sense. New technology has made it so that these stories can be told in a more engaging and scary way than the slasher flicks of old. But still, I don't think it's worth it to sacrifice a meaningful plot for such effects. That's just my take as a non-film critic on why horror movies as of late have sucked so much. There needs to be a prominent direction shift in how these reboots are being done and how new horror movies are being done. And I just hope that you all agree that these movies are just terrible and they're hard to watch and it's hard to keep going back to the cinema.